we wanted to start with some high level, some season-long predictions to give you guys where we're standing early on. And I know you don't love bold predictions, so I'll start with my bold prediction.
Okay.
There's one team that I think is getting criminally underrated. We, on Tuesday, talked with Pete Prisco about them, had him in their 20s. I think they will win their division this year. It's not a worst to first situation, but the Seattle Seahawks, I think, will win the NFC West. I look up and down this roster, and I see no reason why they cannot compete with the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I also maybe made that bold prediction before Brandon Ayuk resigned and before Trent Williams came back.
Home.
Those all obviously make their path a little bit more difficult. But I think when you look at their schedule, obviously not as difficult as the 49ers will have it, I think they have a nice run of it out the gate. Broncos, Patriots, when you get two of probably the lesser teams in the AFC to start it off, the Mike McDonald era there in Seattle, we'll see a 2-0 team heading into a Miami Dolphins game, which they're beat up themselves. And so you get kind of a couple layups to get yourself going, maybe get your offensive line back healthy here. And then I think you see this defense really turn it on. That's where I'm most excited because I think Mike McDonald, you know, what he did with the Baltimore Ravens last year cannot be understated. They were a top 3 defense in the NFL with, you know, you can say they had top 3 personnel, but it was a lot of the same personnel that was there before him that he got the best out of them. He got career years.
Yes. The margins there.
And that's what it looks like when you have a DC to that caliber. So for me, I think this defense has a massive turnaround from a bottom 10 unit last year to a top 10 unit this year. And then offensively, with what they have at wide receiver, not a lot to dislike. And now we have Brian McFadden on.
B-Mac.
What do you think
What's up?
What do you think of my Seahawks take? Am I out to lunch here?
Mike, you're dead on. You're dead on. And I gave my way too soon playoff prediction some weeks ago, and I actually had Seattle in my playoffs for the NFC. I love their roster. I think they have experience. And if you look at the last time the Seahawks made the playoffs, which was 2 years ago, a lot of their key contributors, especially on the offensive side, they were rookies. You look at Cross, you look at Kenneth Walker, you look at Rick Woolen in the back end for the secondary. All of those guys were rookies that found a way to get into the playoffs, and they had a bit of a letdown a year ago when you factor in some of the more athletic, experienced guys they've added to their team via free agency. And I love the draft, along with Mike McDonald, who is a rookie coach, but they have everything you would want to have plus more to be able to have a significant playoff run this year. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and the vets on the offense, you know, in the right positions. I love Geno Smith, and I think that when you can throw the football naturally like Geno Smith does, there's a handful of guys in the league that just throw it pretty effortlessly, and Geno's in that category. He's got guys to throw it to him, and obviously B-Mac and Mike were just talking about the defense. It's going to be important to see complementary football in Seattle. That'll be the only way to get them out of the division, number one. But also, you can't understate the impact that Seattle fan base has. And when you're trying to come and play on the road against a team like Seattle, it doesn't matter what team you're playing against in Seattle, it is very tough sledding. You can't hear anything as an offensive lineman. It's always a tough one. And we're going to move on to my bold prediction.
Kyle, got
now.
a question for you.
Yeah, what's up, B-Mac?
Was that the loudest stadium you ever played in?
Yes,
Seattle?
yes, it was. And it was Cliff Averill at a wide 9, and it was Michael Bennett at a 5, and they were just running NASCAR packages all day, and Jimmy Clausen was back there.
Did you ever false start there?
Cooking marshmallows. It was a tough day at the office for the kid, but I don't think I gave Cliff Averill a sack. He wanted one, and he kept saying he's going to get one. But, you know, we got out of there alive. Yeah, Seattle, very, very loud place.
All right, B-Mac, let's get to your bold prediction next. What do you got?
Okay, I didn't go with a team with my bold prediction. I went with more of an individual or individuals, right? When you look at the league right now, guys, I think it's safe to say it will always be a quarterback-driven league because quarterbacks are overly important, right? But outside of quarterbacks, the league has now started to transition to a wide receiver league. And with that being said, I'll give a date to you guys, and I want to know what you guys were doing on this particular date back in time. November 26th. 1989. Do any one of you guys kind of remember what you were doing? I know I'm older than both of you guys.
I wasn't alive.
1989, November 26th.
I was probably spitting up on my bib and watching my dad play in the playoffs or getting ready to play in the playoffs.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sounds about right. But for me, that date is super important in the NFL when it comes to record Brooks. The great Flipper Anderson, right? Willie Flipper Anderson, who was playing for the Los Angeles Rams. He created a record. He had a record that is still relevant to this day. Against the New Orleans Saints, he had 15 receptions for 336 yards and a touchdown. Now, a few years back, if you guys remember, Calvin Johnson came very, very close to breaking that record or tying that record. 2013 against the Dallas Cowboys, he had 14 receptions for 329 yards and a touchdown. My bold prediction this season in the NFL, one of these high prolific wide receivers will break the great Flipper Anderson's receiving yards record in one game. So the target number is 336. All we need is 337. That's it. That's light work. All these guys getting $30+ million. I believe one of these guys will break Flipper Anderson's receiving yards record in the NFL.
Who do we think it would be?
First off, I love that, B-Mac. And I think that some of these receivers that are so dang good and so productive are on teams that are trying to punch up a lot of times week in, week out. So they're going to be throwing the ball all the time. We could see this. And with the quarterback play and with the stuff you're seeing pre-snap, it's all advantageous to the offense. I like where you're heading with this, B-Mac. I like it a lot.
I will say, though, we have 2 300-yard games in the last decade. One was that Calvin Johnson one. One was Julio Jones against the Carolina Panthers back in 2016. Both those guys out the league now. If there's anyone that would do it, I mean, I think all eyes would go to, like, Tyreek Hill. Right? I think if, like, when he goes off, I go back to that, what was it, the Bucs game a few years back when Carlton Davis was following him across the field and just couldn't hang with them. He would be my pick.
Yep.
But I do think, like, Justin Jefferson, the Vikings this year, they might be down in some games where they're just feeding him left and right.
Well, DJ Moore went for 230 yards last year with Justin Fields at quarterback. So who's not to say,
against Washington.
Yeah, a guy like that can't go out there and get thrown the ball a couple more times, maybe breaks one out into the open field. Maybe you get a cover 2 beater and you get this guy running for 70 yards. Next thing you know, DJ Moore is at 320 yards. We're sniffing that record now, B-Mac.
I think it's doable. I think it's doable. Now, as a former defender in the secondary, you guys know I don't want to see it, but you guys needed a bold prediction. I wanted to make sure I came with my boldness.
That was really good, and I've got a bold one too, and this may ruffle some feathers. You know, this may upset the apple cart. I know we got a lot of Eagles fans that listen here, and obviously my older brother Chris was on the Eagles, Super Bowl champ with these guys, and I'm buddies with some of the guys that are going to be mentioned here. So I think that the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles will have a better offensive line than the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles had, and they're losing out on having a Hall of Famer at the very centerpiece of that offensive line. And here's why. I just think these guys are big and bad at tackle. They can help out this center, Cam, who's going to be filling in for Jason Kelsey. Landon Dickerson has got to be like 350 pounds. Jordan Mailata is an absolute dump truck at left tackle. Lane Johnson, I don't think there's anybody better in one-on-one pass protection or stretching the play side of a run play than Lane Johnson. And obviously, the big question mark and the thing that remains to be seen is Mekhi Becton's health, his ability to play guard. But I think that Dave Stoutland, the offensive line coach in Philadelphia, has done such a fabulous job developing talent, creating continuity, and I think they're not going to miss a beat. In fact, the center of that offensive line, I feel like, gets stronger this year with some more size inside and with a little bit more youth in the middle. I mean, we all love Jason Kelsey, a first-ballot Hall of Famer, first-ballot human being. That's the reason they just got $100 million. The guy's a huge personality. But I think football fans need to separate church and state a little bit. Jason's no longer in the building, and this group, in my opinion, will be better than the 2023 group. It all comes down to keeping the pressure out of Jalen Hurts' face, particularly in the middle of that pocket, B-Mac.
A little pot-on-pod crime. Shots fired at New Heights.
I love it.
You know what?
And real quick,
we don't want to fight the New Heights guys. They're still active athletically. Me and Mike are just some old heads talking ball now, okay?
Hey, real quick with that take, I love it, Long, but when it comes to the wild card on their offense, I know you talk about Jurgens at center replacing the Hall of Famer, but if they can get anything out of Mekhi Becton, and the only thing you have concerns with is health, because he's one of the more athletic guys on the offensive line. He's one of the bigger guys. But if he can just stay healthy, and it seems like what I'm hearing, he's embraced this new guard role because he was drafted in the league as a tackle, but he's embraced playing more so in the interior, and he's looked really, really good. So when you look at the experience that offensive line has with highly invested players, either via free agency or via draft, I mean, you're on to something. Now, my only concern would be this. How good would this offensive line without Jason Kelsey, how good would they be when it comes to the brotherly shove or the tush push?
Yep.
Yeah, I do think that there will still be a semblance of the tush push in their playbook, and we talked about it last week, but I don't think they're going to lean as heavily on it because, as you and I both know, some guys are just cut differently physically. Jason Kelsey was cut the perfect way to drive that little wedge under the door and get those guys in there for the first down, and that's why they were so successful in short yardage situations. I still think we see that, but we will also see just a lot of mass moving mass, B-Mac. That's what they've done. They brought one of the biggest guys at tackle, Mekhi Becton, put him inside. You're going to have a 700-pound double team between Lane Johnson and Mekhi Becton. My neck hurts, my wrists hurt just thinking about being a defensive lineman going against that group.
I get the nail on the head in that even if they're not better, if you're a defensive lineman, this is a group you want to face less. Because of that, when you get pancaked by two, I mean, they go 350 plus 4 of those 5 guys.
I mean, Landon Dickerson mows his lawn in his free time. That's what he likes to do. He likes to mow his lawn. Guys like that, they're dangerous in a phone booth, man. You want to stay away from the Landon Dickersons of the world.